Alrighty, thank you everybody for attending the class. We're gonna start really quickly, and I'm gonna follow the. If you haven't watched the, I'm sorry, not watch. if you came in and haven't watched the previous class, do watch the video. I'm gonna follow the same format I did last class. I think it's working good. If you have any opinions on how to make it better, I'm open to it. I mean, I'm talking here, but it's a study group, right? So I'm more than interested in what you think works, what doesn't work, so we can make it better. You can reach out to me, or if you don't want to reach out to me, which I understand, you can reach out to Brooke, and then Brooke can help with organizing new things or just changing it in a way that's better for you. All right, let's get to it. So we got 30 minutes, so let's get to it. So I'm going to discuss quickly the main concepts I think you should have, you should know for the pages that we covered that lead us all the way to the end of chapter 2. Looking forward to chapter 3, where we will start working with dictionaries, key value pairs, which I'm really excited for. So let's finish this chapter so we can start on that next week. So I opened the interpreter, so if you want to follow along, you can. And I'm going to come up with a variable name called letters, okay? And I'm going to use this method or this functionality here called list. And we're familiar from last class in regards to what does it do, right? It takes a string and turns it into a list. And I like this a lot because and let me just show you. Because last time, if you wanted to do a list, or the way that we traditionally showed it, right, was going like this, right? Like A, oops, right? And this is kind of time consuming, right? I'm saying them in Spanish because I had the worst time with spelling in English, because the way how English has vowel sounds that sound one way in a sentence and sound different in another. So I always mess them up. So I have to say in Spanish. Okay, A-E-O. All right, so there we go. So they're both lists, right? And again, harking back to last class, if we use type, we can use the built-in method to make sure it's a list, right? Same thing with letters. And this is I'm not summarizing. I'm reviewing some of the stuff so we can learn, right? The best way of learning something is through repetition, or one of the ways, repetition and doing. Alrighty. Now, instead of using the same examples of the book, I'm gonna use a different example, just so that way we can hammer this with a different set of letters or words or strings or whatever. So I'm gonna have this list, and I'm gonna write here, it's my long sentence. I mean, it's not really long, but for our purposes, it will work. And we're gonna check that it's a list. All right, something I wanna highlight here. Notice how I use a single quotation inside of it. If I'm gonna do that, I have to put double quotations on the outside. So if I don't do that, it's gonna get confused, right? Because these double quotations are delimiting, sorry, the string. It means that,
sorry, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it just me, or did anyone else hear that cut out a bit? It might just be on my end, but I just want to make sure and see if anyone else had problems hearing you just now. Can people type in a 1 if they? Okay. So maybe it was so that people did hear you. Okay, so maybe it's something on my end. No need to repeat.
No, and actually that's a good point, because right now you can't tell because it seems I'm on a beach by my fake background, but it's super raining here in Orlando, like the Orlando area, like pouring. And usually I lose internet when that happens. And if that does, don't leave. Just give me a few minutes, because then I'll switch over to my cell phone Wi-Fi, which usually is pretty solid and pretty fast, and we can go teach from there. But if you lose me because of that, it's pouring in Orlando. So anyways. All right, yeah, so we wanted that double quotations, using double quotations here, then you need for your single quotation on the inside, because these double quotations are delimiting the string, right? The interpreter says, okay, the string starts here and ends here, where the double quotations end. The opposite is true. If I have double quotations inside my string, then I gotta enclose it in single quotations, right? And if you see here, when I type sentence and the interpreter goes and starts showing me the values, it takes the single quotation and surrounds it by double quotations. So the interpreter is smart enough not to put triple quotations, right? like, you know, one quotation, one single quotation to enclose another single quotation. And it can't, I mean, it doesn't do that because it will cause problems. Remember last class? Last class I showed you that if I want to comment something, I use triple single quotations to comment a block, right? So, and I'm not saying this is the reason, but I'm showing you an example of how putting 3 single quotations together has a meaning within the language. So the interpreter is smart enough to go and do this here. So that's a good teaching point there. Remember, if you have some issues in regards to that, make sure that your double quotations surround single quotes or vice versa. And you can ask, well, when does that actually happen? Well, you'll see it a lot when you're dealing with HTML. Maybe you want to take some of the contents, the file that you wrote for the homework, and instead of doing it to a plain text file, maybe you want to do it as HTML, right? And HTML tags, you know, you use quotations, double quotations to determine different tags in HTML. So now you have to think, okay, if I'm gonna send a double quotation to my file, I need to enclose it in single quotations. Okay, and I know verbal is kind of hard to grasp, but down the road we're gonna see more of that in the different DFIR examples or DFIR examples that we're gonna give. All right, slicing, and this is the last time we'll talk about slicing like this because you'll have at this point you have it down like nobody's business, right? I'm gonna use a slice here. I'm gonna start at position 0 of my list, which is this I here. And I'm gonna stop at position 4. And what do I get? I get its, right? I got the first word based on the indexing of that list. And again, indexing is the address of each location for each character, okay? So we did that last class, easy. Now, the book taught us a way of turning this slice that we took from our list and turning it back into a string. Remember here on the top, we went from this string, don't panic, and turn it into a list. Now we're going the other way around. And how do you do that? You use it with join. Join sentence. And I mean, we could do the whole, I want to say array because of when I used to do C, but the whole list. But, you know, we're just going to do it this way. Notice how I have the string by itself, right? It's not in this list format, okay? And you might ask yourself, and I don't think the book was clear on this, so I'm going to explain it. What is happening here? This whole, what is this, you know, kind of this 2 single quotations and nothing in them, like doing for this, right? So I want to do a teaching point here. You're going to go and you're going to put join. Yeah, let's put join Python and see what we get. All right, so let's see here. Join method, right? It creates strings from iterable objects, and iterable means that you can go, you know, item by item by item, doing stuff with them, right? Okay, so it creates strings, so that's clear. All right. Each element of an iterable, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but you get the gist. And it says here, oh, a list. Well, I have a list. Great, I'm in the right place. And it has a string separator, the string on which the join method is called, and returns the concatenated string. What does that mean? Well, it thinks that I've used a separator, and then I apply it to each item in the iterable list, and it gives me a long string. Well, let's test that. And the reason I'm doing this is showing you how when you have a question in regards to how something works, you Google it, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Oh, one more thing. And again, I'm going by this definition here on the top because I know what the words mean. But if you don't know what these words mean, like straight up, go into one of the links and you'll see examples. See, do you see the examples here? And the examples will help you understand, okay? I'm trying to teach you how to fish instead of just giving you the fish, right? So let's do an example here. So based on what we read, we're gonna take each item in the list and join it with a separator. But my separator here is not, yeah, it's nothing, right? There's not a space here, it's just nothingness in a sense. That's why between the items I'm joining from the list, there's nothing in them. What happens if I put a dash as the separator? And I think it's pretty obvious what's gonna happen, right? Notice that? It puts the separator in between each item of the list that we're joining, okay? And hopefully that made sense. So this is a way of turning that into a string. You want to turn it into a string? Just don't put a separator. Say join it with no separator, like we did on this line, and you get your string back to you. There might be moments or situations when you need a separator, then that's how you do it. And the separator could be anything you want. It could be letters, it could be whatever. All right, So I think that's pretty clear. If
I
that
have a
makes,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Could this be useful, say, like, I don't know, if you need to find phone numbers or something like that in different formats?
So to find numbers, I like, depending on how the data, it all depends on how the data is structured, okay? If I'm not sure, I'm gonna use a regex, and that's something that I wasn't thinking. I mean, I don't have it in my head as a part of the class, but we'll put it in. I mean, this is a great question, so I'll put it in. So we'll deal a little bit with regex, at least how Python does it. Regex could be its own, month-long class, but we'll touch a little bit about it. Now here, when can I use this if I want to put separators? Maybe, I have a different sets of numbers that I wanna, join with a separator. Sure, why not? Inside here, inside this join, I can put different things inside of here. And so it could be, maybe I have maybe I have 3 or 4 variables that I want to, the contents I want to separate with this. Yeah, I just join them like that. That could be it could be numbers. I could have, let's say, an area code, a variable for an area code, a variable for the first, 3 digits, and then a variable for the next 4 digits. Sure, I can just use a separator and join them. Absolutely. So that's one example. That's a good one. But for finding numbers, we would use a regex or some other way, depending on how the data structure.
Good point.
Yeah. Since the question was up, just quickly, from homework, you might remember, we'll discuss it. Let me speed up. We'll discuss it. The data structure will define how do you approach it. In the builds.prop file, we had a line of text, and when we read that line of text, we noticed that every line had an equal sign in it, and there was a kind of like descriptive value on the right and another value on the left. So since that's how the data came, then we made a solution on how to, taking advantage of that equal sign to parse our data. So how you code will depend on how the data is coming to you, and you'll adjust accordingly. All right. Let's give it speed, because I wanna discuss the homework, which is the big thing. If, let's say, we want to reverse it using slices, and I'm gonna call a variable called reverse, and we're gonna take our sentence, and we're gonna go and use the slice, but we're not gonna start at the beginning. I'm not gonna tell it where to stop. I do wanna tell it that I wanna go one by one from the back, from the end of that string, right? And if I go and use the technique we learned, this method of making sure we make it a string, notice that it's my long sentence is all in reverse, because we went from -1, which is the end position, right? Remember, -1. I mean, from the beginning, but from the negative position, which is -1. And so we put the E at the beginning, right? And then the C next, and then the N next, and we're going from back to forward, right? Slices. Right, that's it. Enough about slices. Let's quickly discuss the panic thing. I'm not gonna go line by line. I'm just gonna give you a teaching point directly. We're gonna run it. Oops, I did the wrong thing. Save it and run it. All right. As you were doing the different removes, extend, and the pops, right? You took the string don't panic, turned it into a list, and you changed the list, and then took that changed list and turned it into a string. That's what happened here. And you can see the prints, how that works. The teaching point of this is when you use pops and removes and extends, you're actually changing your list. At this point, when I have on tab, there's no pop, no nothing that I could get my original list back, right? You would have to append or insert those values back. And if you pop them and didn't keep those pop values somewhere, they're lost. You cannot give them back. Compare that with, and let's open the solution that the book gave us. Panic 2. Let's run it. Here, we took our string, turned it into a list, did different slicing of that list, but it's still a list. It didn't change. And we have our string out. So that's the difference, right? And the solution that the book gave us, where there's no pops, no extends, no removes, is just joining different slices and different values from the index locations, right? From our list, and taking them and putting them in a variable as a string, okay? One is destructive, while the other one isn't. There'll be moments you want to use one way of doing it. There'll be moments you want to do it differently. I really like the slice way or the non-destructive way, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve with your coding. Okay, perfect. So now let's get into, one more thing. Last example from the book I wanted to highlight, the big important things. Where's Marvin? I think it's Marvin 2, yeah. All right, I want to highlight this. Oh, I did not want to show everybody. What am I doing? Hold on. Why am I hitting speaker view here? I'm the worst. Let me hit. All right, let's see if this works. I'm gonna put everybody down. There we go. Okay. All right, so notice here, we have our string and we did some slicing. And as we were slicing, we were printing, we gave it to the print function, a T for a tab, and then whatever characters.
Your screen is not appearing.
Your screen's not shared, yeah.
Oh, my screen's not shared? Oops, I'm a reverse genius. Thank you. There we go. All righty, and let me see if I can move this around. All right, so is my screen up, right?
Yes.
All right, so you take here the tab character, the tab, right? And then whatever you sliced, you print, right? This is the teaching point on this. Notice how the tab character, you can say by 2, and it will print that tab twice, okay? And when we run it, we see that. You see that? So we went, it's 2 tabs, 3 tabs. So we got 1 tab, and then 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3. You see that? So just keep that in mind. Notice how you can take this object, this string here that I'm sending, and I can actually just multiply it to show it 2 times because print allows me to do that. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go to the homework. So for the homework, I was trying here to show you here. There we go. I show you how to open a file with open, and there's more than one way of opening a file. If you did your attempt to do your homework, you saw that there's a way of doing this without the with or with the with. So for now, we're gonna do it this way, okay? And then we went for, we took the open, we opened it, and we went line by line from that file. And I discussed last class, I suggested you do it this way, right? That you take the line of text and split it at the equal sign. And that was based on our research and understanding of how the file looks. So let's open it here, right? You saw every line has an equal sign that divides the key from the value. Perfect. Now, what the homework was asking for you to do was to pull out a couple of more values, right? And write it to a file. I'm gonna run this quickly. I'm not writing to a file. I'm just gonna run it because I wanna show you something new. So let's run this example I have here. Notice that I go line by line looking for these different keys before, with the equal sign. And then I'm printing out the value that I split it here. Okay, and again, if you're watching this, if somebody's watching this video later and doesn't make sense, you need to watch the previous class video because it will catch you up on what's happening here. Now, notice that each time I do my print, there is a space, a new line underneath. And I might not want that. I might want to show them all together. So notice what's happening here. And I discussed it last time. If you just print out the string from that's contained within the list, right? That's contained from the beginning to the end. I mean, I'm sorry, from the equal sign to the right of it. You don't see it yourself with your eyes by printing it, but if you print out the actual content of that list, the split list on position 1, what you'll see is the following. Well, not that one. I need split what? Oh, of course not. Hold on. It's not split, it's splits. There we go. Let's do it again. Run it. All right, so it gave me the 3, it gave me the thing, but I want to print it as a, let's see here. How can I send it to the screen that it shows? Just give me a sec. Oh, I know. No, let me do this here. Let me just put here line. There we go. That's better. Ah. All right. No, it's still recognizing it. Thing is, oh, I remember now. My bad. It's with list. It's the command, list command. All right. So list. Make sure it's list. And now I do it. Splits 1. There we go. I didn't put in my notes that I need to do this. Okay, this should work. Let's make sure it works. There we go. So you see here that new line at the end, and I don't want that, right? It's not going to show on your screen when you print, because print will actually know that this new line character is a new line, so it will just execute the new line, right? But if you look at the content of your list as a list, you see that the last entry there is a new line. So we want to take that out. So this is the new thing we're going to learn. I'm going to show you now a cool functionality that Python has called rstrip. And what rstrip does, and again, teaching you how to fish, you can literally just go Python rstrip, or if you're not really sure what you're looking for, in this case, I know what I'm looking for, the rstrip method. But let's say you're like, Python remove new lines from a string. This sounds pretty good. And see, they recommend to use rstrip. And now I have a clue or a lead that I can follow, right? It removes a trailing new line, trailing obviously to the right of the string. That's why it's R, all right? Notice that the process, you're not really sure. You need to take that new line out. I'm not sure, just Google it, and it'll give you the answer. So I'm gonna show you how that works. I'm gonna take splits, that value, and I wanna concatenate, put it together, right? With splits again, but I'm gonna remove rstrip from my output, strip that new line character at the end. I'm gonna run this, and then we can do the comparison. So notice how here, and we have, and again, this parts look like normal because we haven't changed anything else on the script, but this is the part I wanna highlight. Notice how pixel here has a new line, right? Then you have the space that I put here, this space here, and then you have pixel 3, but then you have the prompt. There's no new line underneath it because it removed it, okay? Does that make sense for everybody? This will remove that from the bottom. So how do we apply this? So let's just copy this, and let's just put it or add it here to each ending of our index list content. Let's save it, and let's run it. And now you notice that everything is all, together, right? It takes the new line out. So every time you're calling your print, it will show you a line. Then it will call the print, show you the next line. It's not adding that new line character at your print statement. And I'm showing you this because, the solution for writing to a file, you might use this, right? So let's get into that. I said, pull out some interesting data and write it to a file. We got the pull out interesting data pretty much done here. And you could have pulled more stuff if you wanted to on your solution, but I only pulled these 3 for the example, and you can use more elifs or elifs for it. So let's show you my solution. I think it's this one, right? Yeah. So what am I doing here? So I opened the file, but before I opened the file, I created an empty list. And this is important. There is more than one way of solving this problem, right? There's more than one way. This is the way that I use the most with lists or direct dictionaries. This is the way I do it the most. I define an empty list, nothing in it. And then I open the file. I go and kind of parse my data based on the equal sign in this case. I find what I need in this line. I print it to the screen so I know what's going on. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking that content that I care about and I'm appending it to the report variable here. You see what you see, notice what I'm doing here? Same, and with each line I do the same. Okay, I found what I needed, I wanna append it to my list. I found what I needed, I will append it to my list. Okay, and I have it all, right? So let's see how that part looks. All right, so I have a, where's that R strip coming from?
I have a question.
Yeah,
actually.
go ahead.
This was also asked in the chat earlier, and I had to step away briefly, so I don't know if it's already been answered, so I apologize. But
here it is.
Could you clarify when one should use brackets, parentheses, or the curly things? Like if you were to put in R strip and use brackets maybe instead of parentheses, would that make a difference?
Yes. Oh, yes, it will. So whenever you're calling methods or functions in Python, remember methods, it's like the dot notation. You got your variable, and then you're gonna do whatever to it with the dot notation. This has to be in parentheses. If you put brackets there, it's not going to work, right? Brackets have specific uses in Python. One of the uses is to define dictionaries. We will talk about that later. And then another use, and make sure I'm not lying, make sure I'm saying things right. Because when I talk, yeah, that's right, yeah. So brackets for defining dictionaries, and we'll get to it. And also in this context, you're using S strings like we're doing here, then the bracket, is it bracket or curly brace? Sorry, the curly brace, I apologize. The curly brace means you can define dictionaries, or you can define here, if it's an F string, what's inside of this curly thingy is a variable or an object, okay? It's not just plain text. Like here, Android is just the word Android. It's just a string, right? A word. And manufacturer is a sentence, right? But inside of here, it is an object, right? In this case, is a list, a part of a list. If I take these things out, what's gonna show me is just the word splits bracket 1, right? It's not gonna interpret it as an object that needs to be, shown to you. Let's just run it so it makes sense. See here, it's just, since I only made the change in the list on the bottom, see Android manufacturer is splits 1, right? Instead of giving me the actual value of splits 1, it just literally prints out splits 1, just like that, right? And that's not what we're looking for. We want to put these curlies at the end as a star at the end. So now the interpreter says, okay, I have an S string. All this is a string. Wait, what's coming next is an object. Let me work with it or interpret it. And then we're done with that object. Are there any more? No, because I have the single quote, the limiting. I'm done, and I'm done, right? So if I save this and run it again, you'll see here that Android manufacturer is, and we get Google, right? And the Newline, like as expected, as opposed to is splits that you see here. So does that make sense, Brooke? This is coming through the answer, the explanation?
Yep, I think so, right? The person who, asked, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those parentheses they're important, super important, and you cannot switch them around. And we get into functions, like here, the open, these has to be like this. It cannot be any other way. It's not gonna work, it will give you an error. All right, so as I'm showing you my answer, notice here, since I ran it, I did a print report. Remember that I did an empty list, an empty list here, and I'm appending what I want to that list. And I printed that list, and here it is. Here is my list, right? So now what I do is, the part that you need to research is, okay, I'm gonna open a file, and notice I'm opening this file with a W. That means that I can write to it, okay? If you put an R, it's not gonna work, because that's for read only. This is for writing. And I did a handler for that file called file2, okay? And we'll discuss what a handler is later on. And this is the part that's the magic of this. For every value, right? And this could be any sort of variable name. I could put X, Y here, it doesn't matter, but I decided to call it value. For every value in my report list, right? I'm going to take and to file2, right? That handler for that open file. I'm gonna have this method write, and I'm gonna write that value to my file. Hopefully that explanation makes sense. And this is kind of like a pattern you will see as you work with Python, right? You got your variable that you're gonna work with. In this case, this variable is a handle that points towards the file I'm gonna write. And I'm gonna use the method called write to literally write to the file, right? And I already did it here. So if I open the file, let me just minimize this, and I have the zoom gets in the way. That's why it's kind of, sometimes you see me kind of fumble around this. I didn't want to close the interpreter, but that's fine. All right, here it is. I have here report for build.prop. Okay. And here's my nice little report. You see that? Android build version, and I wrote it to my file. It is a simple report. It's just a text file, but down the road, you can make really more complex reports as we go along. And notice how each one is in its new line, and each one is in a new line because our data, the source, already had a new line in it. There we go. Already had a new line in it, and we discussed that, right? Notice how here on my append, I'm not using rstrip on my append. You notice that? If I were to use rstrip on my append here, down here, what would happen? Well, let's do it. And I know I'm past the half hour, but this is the last thing, and we're done. If I do this down here, if I strip that new line, how will my report look? Let's run it. Okay, everything ran, and you can even notice the difference, right? Notice how my list now has no new lines. You see that? So let's see how that looks. And again, sorry for the fumbling. It gets in the way, the Zoom interface. Notice, see that? Now I have all my values in the same line on my report, which kind of sucks, right? So you will find sometimes that if your data source, if you're writing to a text file and your data source doesn't have a new line indicator or object there, you might need to add it. So that way you get your values in separately by line, right? In this case, it goes and just writes. And the command is to write. If you want to make it a tab, make it a new line, you need to make sure that that goes with your write command as you're executing it. Okay, so we take that out. Now it's off. Save it, run it. And as we saw, you'll see the new lines are there now. And notice, using these methods, again, I did not change the list. You notice that, right? I didn't pop it out, and pop it could have worked, but I wouldn't be able to do this easy going back and forth, right? Because I will be changing my list. But here I'm not changing the list. I'm just, selecting what I want from each. Okay, and that's that. So notice one more thing. Notice how I aggregated what I needed in my list first. Another way of solving this, I could have opened the file to read and the file to write here at the top. And I could be executing file write here every single time, right? So I could have done this. I could have done, instead of report.append, I could have done this. You see that? Hopefully everybody sees that. I could have done that. As long as I open the file for writing on the top before I call write, this could have worked. Absolutely could have worked, and it's not wrong. Why didn't I do it that way? And this is some of the things you'll learn as you're doing this. I rather do it this way because now, in order for me to write my report, it's independent from me getting the data. Does that make sense? This functionality comes afterwards, and it's separate from this portion up here, which means that I might be opening different files to create reports, and it don't matter, right? I don't have to, let me put it this way. I can use this to write my report no matter with how many files I am working with, all right? The only thing I would need to change here is the list name, all right? So let's say, I know it sounds confusing. In my head, it makes sense. It might not make sense in yours. So let's do this. All right, and imagine this is report 2, okay? Report 2, okay? If I execute this code, instead of with report 1, with report 2, it will create my report. And notice I didn't have to go and add write to each and every one, right? This piece of code can apply to this, and this piece of code can apply to this. All right, my reporting is separate from my generation of the data to be reported on. And I'm telling you this verbally because eventually this idea is called functions.
Could you repeat that last line or two again for me? Sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, no problem. By separating the reporting part from the part that you're actually generating the data or extracting the data, it's good for you because I can use these 3 lines of code to report on all these lines and to report on all these lines. Does that make sense? And what I'm introducing verbally here is the concept of functions. And we'll talk about it in a future class where I can have a little piece of code that I can repeat and use as part of other pieces of code, right? This will be my reporting function. We'll talk about that later as we go through it. But I'm just introducing the concept of, look, I open this file to read it, pull some stuff out. I open this file, read it, and pull some stuff out. Now I can just call this piece of code and report on both, right? As long as I'm making sure I'm changing this here. So it points to the right list to report on, okay? And also I will change the name accordingly. And that's kind of like a function. Instead of opening a file here, and then doing the writes each and every line. If I wanted to add more things here and write to it, I would need to add more writes. And I'd rather just do appends because I don't have to change this code for nothing. This code never changes other than the name of the file and the name of the list. And I'm kind of regretting saying this now because I'm pretty sure it's pretty confusing, right?
No, there's a couple of, and I think some people are also starting to answer the question. But there are a couple of questions here. One of them is the idea of separation of concerns, or is the idea of separation of concerns? And somebody wrote back, it streamlines the code and allows you to call the modules as needed.
Yes, and I'm doing a soft, and again, since I never done this class, we're coming up with us together. I need to find a way to explain it better. But what the person that wrote that is correct, right? If I can take this reporting part and just disappear from here. I disappeared it, and I can just call it. Let's say I have a function called print reporting function. And it's somewhere else, and I feed it the list, and it does it, and gives me my report, right? Since I haven't introduced functions, I know it's confusing, so I'm gonna change that approach in the future. But the point I'm trying to make is this part of the code that does the reporting takes as an input the list that I created on the top, right here, and then it knows to write whatever it needs to write. So this is kind of separate from this. If I put my writes in here instead of appends, then my reporting is mixed with the actual finding of the data, which is not wrong. Don't get me wrong. I mean, don't misunderstand me. That works, and that's not incorrect. I want to show you that it's an easier way is if I want to write stuff, I want to write it afterwards, separate from the process of getting the data. Separate from getting the data, because it's easier to code. It's easier to reuse this in the future. I can use these reporting lines here for other pieces of code, and I can report on it this way by opening the file and putting the content into a file. Does that help, Brooke?
I think so, but could people write a 1 if they follow along, or a 0 if they don't, or if they want clarification maybe in a future class?
Yes. What are you seeing?
I see, ones and working smarter, not harder.
Okay.
We do have 1 makes sense, that way your code is modular. Proficiency, yep. And then we also had a question earlier, just like shortly before this, which was, once the script is saved, is there any way to undo the modifications, or once committed, it's gone? Obviously, you can save a different file name.
So that's the answer. So like, as long as you're still working on it in the editor has memory of what it did before and what you did afterwards. If you're going back and forth, control C as in zebra to go back and all that. It's funny because I use them so much, but I do it by muscle memory. So if you tell me, how do I redo something? I don't know. I just know how to, with my fingers know where to go. So redo is, the Shift Command Z, and then undo is Command Z, right? But if you close this file, then that's gone, right? Anything that you did previously is not saved. So that's that. You can save it different file names. If you're using GitHub or Git for your stuff, then it will keep a history of how the file looked before you made final changes. Like, you know, you can pull the file from your Git, work on it, and then you commit the new version. So you can see what it had before you started and what you had when you ended, what you committed. If you don't commit nothing, then the Git will not have that, right? That's one way. I mean, there's many ways. Or like you said, you can say files different names. I like GitHub in that sense because I don't have to be constantly having different files named different ways. I just pull the file, work on it, and then I commit it, and I have that version up there. If I want to look at the past, I can go and look at the past. Let me show you that. And I know I went above the half hour, so I apologize. These are pretty awesome questions. So I'm on my GitHub here. This is my current version, right? It tells you how many days ago I changed something in here, okay? And you can see the different commits that I've sent. So let's open this one here. Update to the README. So if I hit that commit and open it, I can see here, all right, this is how it looked, and this is how it looks in that commit, how it looks now, what the changes were. You see that? So Git can compare, you know, how it was and then how it ended up when I was done, which is pretty convenient. And you can roll back things in GitHub fairly easily. And again, GitHub is another class, but I will try to show you how to use it a little bit as we get into more complex code. So GitHub really manages for me all my versioning. I don't have to be saving things with different names. For now, it's okay. Like for now, look what I'm doing. You look at my recent, in my IDE. You see here, I have Marvin 2, Panic 2, you know, Vowels 2, Vowels 3, and build script 2. So that's okay. And for now, that's more than fine. Save it different ways. In the future, we'll use Git to control that for us. Any other questions?
I'm just going to answer or mention this question. Somebody messaged me about the homework. Homework is usually posted in Discord and on Twitter for anyone who might not use Discord. I think we try to do both. I'm just mentioning this in case there is anyone new in the class.
Yeah, that absolutely. For next class. For next class, I know it's kind of small, you might not see it there, but I'm gonna try to paste this in the chat. So let me copy. Let me see if I can. I have this love-hate relationship with Zoom. Chat. Okay. There we go. So we're gonna go from pages 97 to 121, and we'll be talking about dictionaries, which I'm really excited about. And then page 122, 144 on Thursday. If you have a Kindle version, don't worry. I will put a picture of the starting and ending pages in the Discord chat, so you'll get that. Okay, so you can start your weekend reading on that. And I'm gonna do a shameless plug for myself and for the people that have helped me with iLeap, Brooke and Kevin and a whole bunch of other people, Yogesh. If you're not aware, there's a thing called the Forensic Forecast Awards, and I've been nominated, and iLeap has been nominated. And I say iLeap because iLeap is not my work; it's the work of me and many other nice people. So if you find iLeap to be interesting, or the things that I do for the community interesting, please vote for me. Yay! Thank you, Santiago. I know I can count on you. So the link's in the chat. So so you can go there and vote for it if it helps. Any further questions before we close today?
I don't see any. And like Brig said at the beginning, if anyone has any comments or suggestions or whatever, feel free to contact either of us. You know, people are at different experience levels and knowledge levels in this class. And so, you know, it's helpful for us to know where people are so we can try to make it as like applicable to everyone as possible. Or really Briggs. I mean, this is, you know,
no,
but the one who's really doing the legwork here.
No, but it definitely is, because again, if Brooke can definitely translate some of those requirements to me, because after you're at a certain experience level, you know, I don't believe I know everything, obviously. So it helps for me to then refocus because it makes sense to me, and you'll be like, "This makes no sense," right? So I need that feedback. I need that feedback. So I appreciate that. Hopefully, it didn't make sense. Again, now I'm gonna stop the recording.